At 6:17 that morning, Dennis Caldwell tore out the orange survey stakes that marked the line between my yard and his. Not his yard. Mine. The strip where my wife Elaine had planned to plant hydrangeas before cancer took her. By noon, Dennis was standing on his porch when in Hoa Polo, telling 3 neighbors that my fence would steal community greenbelt. He said the board had already voted. He said I had 72 hours before the fine started. While Dennis had confidence, I had the record. What he did not know was that the county parcel map, the recorded plat, and the surveyor's report were about to put his lie on paper. I did not argue. I opened the side yard camera and saved the one sentence he said while carrying my stakes behind his shed. By the next HOA meeting, that map would not just prove where the line was. It would take Dennis S. board seat with it. My name is Robert Mason. I am 64 years old, retired from teaching high school shop class, and I have lived at 4 and 18 Willow Bend Lane in Willow Creek Estates, Franklin County, Ohio, for 19 years. The house is nothing fancy. 1 story, red brick, 2-car garage, a maple tree out front that drops too many leaves every October. But my wife Elaine loved it. From the first day we walked through the front door. What she used to say the backyard was, unfinished in the best way. For years, she kept a blue folder in the bottom drawer of our kitchen desk. Inside were pencil sketches of the garden she wanted to build someday. Hydrangeas along the left side, 2 raised beds for tomatoes, a small white privacy fence behind the patio, a bench under the dogwood where she could sit with her coffee before the neighborhood woke up. Elaine drew gardens. I drew measurements. Between the 2 of us, that backyard had always been planned on paper before anyone touched the soil. Lung cancer took her before we ever built it. For 3 years after she passed, I did the minimum. I cut the grass. I trimmed the shrubs. I fixed the loose hinge on the back gate because Elaine would have hated hearing it squeak in the wind. But the garden stayed in that blue folder, waiting. Then, one Saturday morning in April, I opened the drawer looking for an old warranty card and found her sketch again. That was when I decided to finish it. Not as a grand memorial, just a fence, some flowers, in a quiet corner of the yard Elaine had already imagined better than I ever could. Because we lived in Willow Creek Estates, I knew better than to build first and ask later. Our HOA was irritating, but it had rules. The fence height, material, emplacement. It had to be reviewed by the architectural committee. I had no problem with that. The fence I wanted was simple, white vinyl, 4 feet along the garden side, 6 feet toward the rear, where the lots opened near the drainage swale. Nothing loud, nothing strange, nothing that blocked a driveway, a view, or anyone's access. But before I submitted anything, I did what I had taught my students for 30 years. Measure first. 1, do not guess. Do not eyeball. Do not build from memory, just because a line feels right. I hired Benton Lowe Surveying, a licensed local firm. The appointment cost $875, which was more than I wanted to spend, but cheaper than building a fence 6 inches wrong and paying twice. 2 surveyors came out on a Tuesday morning. Ivan Lowe was the older one, gray beard, orange vest, quiet voice. His assistant carried a tripod and a yellow case that looked like something from a construction site. They walked the side yard between my house and Dennis Caldwell's property. They found the rear corner monument near the drainage swale. They checked the front pin by the sidewalk. They worked from the recorded subdivision plat in the legal description on my deed. By late morning, bright orange stakes marked the boundary. They ran in a clean line from the front side yard, past Dennis' stone border, and toward the rear corner. I stood there with a cup of coffee, looking at those little orange flags. For the first time in years, Elaine's garden looked less like a memory and more like a project. That was when Dennis Caldwell came outside. Dennis lived next door at 420 Willow Bend. He was 58, always neat, always watching. Navy polo tucked into khakis, sunglasses pushed on top of his head, phone in one hand, while coffee tumbler in the other. He had been on the HOA board for 2 years, and had mentioned it so often that most of us knew before he said it. We walked across his lawn and stopped at the first orange stake. "What's this?" he asked. "Survey markers," I said. "For what?" "Fence application." Dennis looked down the line. His jaw tightened. "That S too far over." I did not answer right away. After 30 years in a shop classroom, full of teenagers holding saws and chisels, I learned that silence prevents more damage than pride does. Dennis pointed at the strip of grass between his stone border and the stakes. "That S buffer space," he said. "Ho, greenbelt." I looked at the grass. For as long as I had lived there, Dennis had treated that strip like part of his side yard. His landscaper edged it. His sprinkler heads watered it. His stone border curved into it so naturally that, if you did not know better, you might believe the property line had politely moved itself for his convenience. But use is not ownership. "I hired a licensed surveyor," I said. "They worked from the deed and recorded plat." Dennis gave a short laugh. "While surveyors make mistakes." "They can," I said. "That S why they carry insurance." Really, he did not like that. He stepped closer to the stake, not touching it yet, just standing over it, like it had offended him. "You should have checked with the board before putting markers on common land." "I checked the HOA rules," I said. "The board reviews fence design, not property lines." That was the first time his expression changed. It was small, but I saw it. The smile thinned. His eyes flicked toward the side yard camera, mounted under the eave near my garage. Then he looked back at me and put on the face he used at meetings. Calm, official, Lee, disappointed. "Robert," he said, "you would not get to claim community property because you paid some guy with a tripod." I should have ended the conversation there. Instead, I asked the only question that mattered. "Can you show me the recorded document that says this is community property?" Dennis smiled. Not a neighbor-s smile. A board member-s smile. "The board has records." "What good?" I said. "Or send them to me." He stared at me for a second, then stepped back from the stake. "You going to create problems for yourself?" "No," I said. "If I am trying to avoid them." Lundier, he shook his head and walked back toward his driveway. That afternoon, I photographed every stake. Wide shot, close shot, time-stamped. I scanned the surveyor's receipt. I saved Evan Lowe's preliminary sketch. I printed Elaine's garden drawing and placed it beside the survey paperwork on the kitchen table. Elaine kept dreams in folders. I kept proof. The next morning, I woke up at 6:45. The coffee maker had just finished dripping when I looked out the side window. The orange stakes were gone. For a moment, I thought I was looking at the wrong part of the yard. I stepped closer to the glass, then opened the back door and walked outside in my slippers. Every marker along the side yard had been pulled, not bent by wind, not knocked loose by a mower. Removed. I found the first broken stake near Dennis S. mulch bed. The orange plastic was snapped across the middle, the flag still attached, half hidden under a wet leaf. I stood there, holding it. It was just plastic. It was not Elaine's sketch. It was not the fence. It was not the garden. But it represented something simple. The line between what was mine and what someone else thought he could take, by acting certain enough. I did not walk to Dennis's door. I did not throw the broken stake into his yard. I did not shout across the grass. I went inside, while set the marker on the kitchen table, and opened the side yard camera app. The footage loaded slowly. Morning, light, empty grass, maple branches moving in the wind. Then, at 6:17 a.m., Dennis Caldwell appeared. He came from his driveway, wearing the same navy Hoa polo. He looked up and down the street first. Then he stepped onto my side of the grass and pulled the first stake out of the ground. He did not hesitate. I pulled about the second. Then the third. At one point, he glanced toward my camera, but not directly at it. That told me he knew it was there and thought the angle would not catch enough. He was wrong. The camera caught him carrying the stakes toward the narrow space behind his shed. Two of them disappeared from view, behind the fence panel he had installed the year before. Then the audio picked up his voice. Low, quick, clear enough that I froze the video and played it again. I am not going to repeat that sentence yet, but I will say this. It did not sound like a man protecting Hoa Greenbelt. It sounded like a man protecting something he had been using as his own. I saved the clip. I backed it up to a thumb drive. I emailed it to myself. Then I called Benton Lowe Surveying and left a calm message explaining that the markers had been removed and asking for a written note confirming where they had been placed. At 10:32 that morning, my phone buzzed. An email from Willow Creek Estates Hoa. Lodge in subject line. Notice of unauthorized construction activity. I opened it at the kitchen table. The letter claimed I had placed construction markers on Hoa Common Greenbelt without approval. It ordered me to remove all markers within 72 hours and suspend my fence application. Failure to comply, what it said, could result in fines of $250 per day. I read it once. Then I read it the way I used to read, a bad shop drawing from a student who thought confidence could replace measurements. There was no violation number, no architectural committee reference, no hearing date, no manager signature, no board president signature, just one name at the bottom. Dennis Caldwell, Whoa, board member. I looked from the letter to the broken orange stake, then to Elaine S. drawing. For 19 years, I had lived quietly in that house. I paid my dues, mowed my lawn, helped neighbors carry furniture, cleared snow from the sidewalk when Dennis was out of town. And now a man who wanted my side yard had put his lie on Hoa letterhead. That was his first mistake. Second was thinking it would answer it with anger instead of records. By noon, 3 neighbors had already heard Dennis' version. One avoided eye contact at the mailbox. Another gave me an awkward nod and walked faster than usual. Dennis stood on his porch with his phone in his hand, watching me like he expected a scene. I did not give him one. I walked inside, opened a new Manila folder, and wrote 4 words across the tab. Fence line Willow Creek. Then I placed the violation letter inside. First document. First lie. Not the last one Dennis would be foolish enough to sign. The first thing I did was nothing. That may sound strange. When there is a broken survey stake on your kitchen table, a video of your neighbor walking across your yard, and an HOA notice accusing you of placing construction markers on land you do not own. But the right moment is not weakness. It is patience. It is giving the other person enough space to write down exactly what they are willing to lie about. At 12:18 p.m., I replied to the HOA email, not to Dennis directly, to the management office. I kept it short. I asked for 4 things: the violation number, the specific bylaw section I had violated, the recorded map showing the alleged common greenbelt, and the board minutes authorizing Dennis Caldwell to issue the notice. Then I printed my email, placed it behind Dennis' letter in the Manila folder, and wrote the time across the top. Dennis had letterhead. I was looking for the record. By 3:00 p.m., Dennis had already started his own kind of planting. Rumors. I went to the mailbox cluster that afternoon and felt the difference before anyone said a word. Mrs. Donnelly from across the street gave me a tight little smile and looked away. A younger couple from the corner, stopped talking when I walked up. Dennis stood near his driveway with his phone in one hand, speaking just loud enough for the sidewalk to hear. Some people think if they've lived here long enough, they can just absorb community property. He did not say my name. He did not need to. That was Dennis' gift. He could make a public accusation, sound like a neighborhood concern. I opened my mailbox, took out a water bill and 2 grocery coupons, and walked back inside, without giving him the scene he wanted. At 4:41 p.m., another email arrived. This one came from Dennis, copied to the HOA manager, Lay, and the architectural committee. Lars, subject line: continued encroachment concern, Mason property. Dennis wrote that I had aggressively challenged the board's authority, that I had refused to acknowledge established greenbelt boundaries, and that immediate enforcement was needed before I installed a fence that would permanently damage community land. There was one sentence near the bottom that made me stop. The board has already reviewed this matter informally and supports enforcement. Informally. That was a word people used when they wanted authority without minutes. I printed that email too. Second, document. Second, lie. The next morning, I called Willow Creek's management office and asked for Carla Henson. Carla had managed the HOA for years. She was not warm exactly, but she was careful. And careful people tend to leave cleaner footprints than powerful ones. When she answered, I gave her my name and asked whether the board had held a vote on my fence application or on any alleged greenbelt violation. There was a pause. Line to see a formal board action in the system yet. Ranch, she said. Was there a violation number? Another pause. Not one assigned through the normal management queue. That was not a yes. Was there a recorded map showing common greenbelt along my side yard? I would need to check the recorded exhibits. Ranchin, she said. That was not a yes either. I wrote her words down as she spoke. Then, Carla added, more carefully, Mr. Mason, I can to give legal advice, but official notices are generally supposed to go through management review before enforcement. I understand, I said. I'll send whatever records I'm able to locate. Thank you. When I hung up, I added a note to the folder. Manager did not confirm vote. Did not confirm violation number. Did not confirm greenbelt map. That afternoon, a sheriff's deputy came to my house. His name was Deputy Ruiz. While he was polite, maybe 40, with tired eyes, and a notepad already in his hand. He said Dennis Caldwell had called the non-emergency line. It was a report, a property dispute, and claimed I was creating a hostile situation over Hoa land. I almost laughed, but I did not. I invited the deputy to stand on the driveway, well, not in the yard, and showed him the broken stake, the survey receipt, and the video of Dennis pulling the markers. Deputy Ruiz watched it twice. Then he said, exactly what a reasonable officer should have said. I can decide a property boundary out here. That depends on survey, Wan County records. I understand. But if someone entered your property, when removed markers, I can document that. I'd appreciate that. We took an incident report. He photographed the broken stake. He asked if I wanted to make a trespass complaint immediately. I said I wanted the records confirmed first. He nodded. That's usually the smart way. Dennis watched the entire conversation from his porch. When the deputy left, without telling me to stop my fence application, Dennis's face changed. Not much. Just enough. By Friday morning, the pressure became official looking. A certified envelope arrived from the Hoa. Inside was a printed letter on Willow Creek Estates letterhead. It said a compliance hearing had been scheduled for the following Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Line at the clubhouse. It said failure to attend could result in fines beginning immediately. It repeated the $250 per day amount. Then it added that any attempt to reinstall survey markers or begin fence work before the hearing would be considered intentional damage to common area property. That phrase bothered me. Common area property. Not possible common area. Not disputed boundary. Not pending verification. They had written it as if the question had already been answered. At the bottom of the letter, there were two signatures. Dennis Caldwell and Marjorie Vance, the Architectural Committee Chair. Marjorie was 81 years old and had lived in Willow Creek longer than I had. She had a sharp tongue, a sharper memory, and no patience for sloppy paperwork. I had served with her once after a windstorm, when half the neighborhood was dragging branches to the curb. So I called her. She answered on the third ring. Robert Mason, she said. I was wondering when you decall. Did you sign a hearing letter about my fence? I signed what Dennis brought over, she said. He told me management had reviewed it. Did you see a map? No. Did you see board minutes? No. Did anyone show you the survey? Pause. No. I did not tell her everything. Not yet. No accusations. No speech. Just that the stakes were gone. The camera had footage. When I would bring the documents to the hearing. Marjorie, voice cooled. Bring the letter, she said. Bring whatever map he claims exists. I want to hear him explain it. That was not support. Not yet. But it was the first sign that Dennis had moved faster than his own paperwork could follow. Saturday morning, I found 3 green flags in my side yard. Not survey stakes. What cheap lawn flags, the kind utility companies use. Dennis had placed them about 6 feet inside the line. Benton Lowe had marked exactly along the edge of his stone border. One flag had black marker on it. Hoa buffer. I stood there looking at it for a long time. A person can lie with words. Dennis had decided to lie with flags. I photographed them from every angle. I placed a tape measure from the garage wall to the flag, then from the garage wall to the original stake hole. I did not pull the flags. I did not give him a photograph of me touching anything he had planted for his little performance. A green flag in the grass was not a recorded easement. It was just Dennis trying to make his version of the line look real before the hearing. Instead of touching the flags, I called Benton Lowe and asked whether Evan could come back Monday morning to document the missing markers and the new flags. The receptionist said he could. Then I sat at the kitchen table and opened the HOA governing documents. Not all of them. I was not trying to become a lawyer overnight. I only wanted the sections Dennis had cited. The certified letter referred to, Section 7.4 Common Greenbelt Protection. I turned to Section 7, Landscaping Standards. 7.1, Lawn Maintenance. 7.2, Tree Removal. 3, Exterior Planting Beds. Then 7.4, While Seasonal Decorations. I read it again. Section 7.4 had nothing to do with Common Greenbelt. Nothing about boundary lines. Nothing about fences. Nothing about HOA bufferland. It limited holiday displays to 30 days after the holiday. For the first time all week, I leaned back in my chair and let out a breath. That did not prove the land was mine by itself. I still needed the county map, the plat, and the surveyor as written confirmation. But it proved something important. Dennis was not just wrong. He was manufacturing authority. On Sunday evening, Carla Henson finally emailed the records she had located. There was a PDF of the subdivision common areas. There were minutes from the last 3 board meetings. There was a blank architectural review form. No vote on my fence. No emergency session. No greenbelt exhibit along my side yard. And no document showing that the 6-foot strip belonged to the HOA. At the bottom of Carla S. email was one careful sentence. Management has not located any recorded exhibit identifying the side yard between lots 41 and 42 as HOA common area. Lots 41 and 42. My house and Dennis S. I printed that sentence and placed it in the folder. Then I looked out the kitchen window at the little green flags Dennis had planted in my grass. The hearing was 3 days away. Dennis thought I was walking into that room to defend a fence. He had no idea I was bringing the rule he misquoted, the map he never checked, in the question. That would start costing him his seat on the board. Monday morning, Evan Lowe came back to my house. He arrived at 8:15 in a white Benton Lowe surveying truck with a magnetic sign on the door and a cup of gas station coffee in one hand. He did not look surprised when I showed him the empty holes where his orange stakes had been. Surveyors, I learned, have a particular expression for this kind of thing. It was not anger, not shock, more like quiet disappointment, dwelling in human nature. Vaughn walked the line slowly, his boots pressing into the damp grass. He looked at the broken stake on my kitchen table. He looked at the 3 green flags. Dennis had planted 6 feet inside the original survey line. Then he looked at me. Did he put these in? I didn't. Raven crouched beside the first green flag. He marked HOA buffer 1 and took a photograph. That is not a boundary marker, he said. I know. It is not placed on the line we marked. How far off? He pulled a measuring tape from his vest. It worked from the same reference points his crew had used the week before. Front pin, rear monument, garage wall, side setback. When he finished, he wrote the number in a small field notebook. 5 feet 9 inches inside your lot at this point, he said. 6 feet 2 inches at the rear. I looked across the grass at Dennis's stone border. For years, that curve of stone had made his yard look wider than mine. I had never cared. Elaine and I were not the kind of people who measured friendship by inches of lawn. But now, those inches had become the whole fight. Levan took more photographs. The missing stake holes, the broken marker, the green flags, Dennis Ass stone border, my garage wall, the rear monument. Then, he said, I'll write a statement. Just the facts, I said. That all surveyors are good for. He almost smiled. By noon, I had his statement in my inbox. It was short, clean, and impossible to misunderstand. The survey markers placed on Robert Mason S. property were based on the recorded subdivision plat, deed description, and existing monuments. The later green flags marked HOA buffer did not correspond to the legal boundary and appeared to be placed inside Lot 41. Lot 41. My lot. I printed the statement and placed it in the folder behind Carla S. email. Then I drove to the county recorder's office. I could have tried to do everything online, but some things feel different when you hold certified paper in your hands. A website gives you information. A county office gives you the record. The woman at the counter was named Marcia Bell. She wore reading glasses on a chain and had the calm patience of someone who had watched neighbors argue about fences for 20 years. I gave her my address and asked for certified copies of my deed, the recorded subdivision plat for Willow Creek Estates, the common area exhibits, and any recorded easement or maintenance access between Lot 41 and Lot 42. While she typed for a while. Then she typed some more. Then she looked at me over the glasses. Fence dispute? Survey stakes, I said. Roll, she nodded. Like that, explained everything. Marcia printed the deed first. Then the plat. Then a large county parcel map that showed Lot 41 and Lot 42 side by side. Black boundary lines clear as ruler marks. My lot line did not bend around Dennis's stone border. It did not follow his sprinkler heads. It did not create a 6-foot HOA buffer. It ran exactly where Even Low had marked it. Straight through the strip, Dennis had been mowing, as if it belonged to him. Marcia checked the index twice for easements. Drainage easement at the rear swale. Utility easement along the front. Nothing between the two lots. No greenbelt. No maintenance access. No HOA buffer. I asked if she could print the index result, while showing no recorded instrument, along that side boundary. Ranch, she did. Not because she was taking my side. County clerks do not take sides. They print what exists. And, sometimes, more importantly, they show what does not. When I got back to the truck, I sat in the parking lot with the county parcel map spread across the passenger seat. The lawn flag could start an argument. Only a recorded map could end one. That afternoon, I received another email from Carla Henson. She had attached the meeting minutes Dennis had referenced when he claimed the board had reviewed this matter informally. There were 3 sets of minutes, 2 regular board meetings, and 1 architectural committee summary. I read all of them at the kitchen table. There was no vote on my fence, no motion about Lot 41, no approval for Dennis to issue a violation. But buried in the architectural summary from 6 months earlier, there was one sentence that made me sit up straighter. D. Caldwell raised concern regarding side yard maintenance access near lots 41-42. Committee advised no action without recorded easement or survey documentation. 6 months earlier. Dennis had already tried, and the committee had already told him no. I printed that page and highlighted the sentence in yellow. That changed the shape of the whole thing. Dennis had not misunderstood the boundary last week. We had been warned months earlier that he needed a recorded easement or survey documentation. He had neither. So he created green flags, a fake rule citation, and a violation letter. 4:30, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Linda Carver. Linda had served as HOA secretary before Dennis joined the board. She was in her 70s, widowed like me, and the kind of woman who remembered every vote because she had taken minutes by hand before the HOA switched to software. I heard Dennis is after your fence, she said. That seems to be the case. We has wanted that side strip for years. I stayed quiet. Linda continued. He told the old board, your lot made his yard look uneven. He wanted us to call it maintenance access. We told him there was no easement. He didn't like that. You all have records of that? I have my notebooks. An hour later, Linda stopped by my house, carrying a brown spiral notebook with a rubber band around it. She opened it on my kitchen table and turned to a page dated nearly 3 years earlier. There it was, in her careful handwriting. Dennis Caldwell requested side yard maintenance access designation near lots 41-42. Rejected pending recorded easement. No recorded easement produced. I read it twice. Not because I needed convincing. Because Dennis had been told the truth, years before he pulled those stakes. Linda signed a short statement. While nothing dramatic, just what she remembered, what her notes showed, and what the board had decided at the time. When she left, the evidence binder was no longer just about my fence. It was about a board member who had known the record did not support him and kept reaching for my yard anyway. That evening, I opened the side yard camera footage again. I had avoided the audio since the first morning. Part of me did not want to hear Dennis's voice on my property. But evidence does not care what you want to hear. I played the clip from 6:17. Dennis crossed the grass, pulled the first stake, then the second, then the third. He carried them toward the shed, phone in his hand, speaking into what sounded like a voice memo. His voice came through low, but clear enough. If he puts that fence up, I lose the whole side strip. I wrote the sentence down exactly. Not what I thought he meant. Not what I wished he had said. Exactly what the camera recorded. Then I played the next few seconds. No, while handle it through the board. I stopped the video. That was the sentence that mattered. Not just the side strip. The board. Dennis had said the quiet part into a camera he thought could not hear him. By Tuesday night, the Manila folder had become an evidence binder. Tab 1, Elaine's garden sketch and my fence plan. Tab 2, Benton Low survey receipt and even-S statement. Tab 3, photographs of the missing orange stakes and Dennis S. green flags. Tab 4, side yard camera screenshots and audio transcript. Tab 5, certified deed recorded plat parcel map, land county index result. Tab 6, Carla S. email and HOA minutes. Tab 7, the architectural summary showing Dennis had already been told no. Tab 8, Linda Carver S. signed statement and notebook copy. I did not feel victorious. Not yet. I felt prepared. There is a difference. Victory is what people imagine before the room turns against them. Preparation is what you carry in when the room still thinks you are the problem. On Wednesday afternoon, 3 hours before the hearing, Dennis sent one final email to the board. He copied me this time. Tonight's meeting should be brief, he wrote. Mr. Mason needs to understand. that individual homeowners cannot override established community boundaries. I printed that too. Last document before the hearing. Last lie before the map. Then I placed the county parcel map on top of the binder, saved the camera footage to a thumb drive, and put Elaine S. blue folder beside it. Dennis thought he was walking into that clubhouse to make me apologize for offense. He did not know. I was bringing the deed, the survey, the county map, the minutes, the witness, and the sentence he had whispered, while carrying my property behind his shed. The Willow Creek clubhouse always smelled faintly of coffee, what carpet cleaner, and old paper. I had been in that room for potlucks, budget meetings, storm cleanup signups, and one very long argument years earlier about mailbox paint colors. It was not a dramatic place. Folding chairs, fluorescent lights, a framed map of the subdivision on the wall, a coffee urn on a side table that had probably survived more board elections than most of us cared to remember. But that Wednesday night, the room felt different. Neighbors sat in little groups, Elise speaking quietly. Some looked at me when I walked in, while some looked away. Dennis had been busy for 3 days, and rumors travel faster in a neighborhood than certified mail ever could. I arrived at 6:12 p.m. The hearing was scheduled for 6:30. I brought the evidence binder, the county parcel map rolled in a cardboard tube, a thumb drive with the camera footage, and Elaine S. blue folder. I did not bring Elaine S. folder because the board needed it. I brought it because I needed to remember why I was there. This was not about winning a fight with Dennis. It was about finishing something Elaine had drawn before she ran out of time. Dennis was already near the front table. Navy polo, khakis, HOA badge lanyard, a folder under one arm, his phone face down on the table, like a weapon he wanted everyone to notice, but not see him holding. When he saw me, he smiled. Not broadly, while just enough to tell me he thought the night was going to end, with me apologizing in front of the room. The board president, Harold Beck, called the meeting to order at 6:31. Carla Henson sat to his left, with a laptop open. Marjorie Vance sat at the end of the table, her hands folded over a copy of the hearing notice she had signed. Beside her was a man I had never met, introduced as Thomas Reed, the HOAS outside counsel. That was the first sign Dennis had misjudged the room. If the HOA attorney had come in person for what Dennis called a simple fence hearing, then someone had started worrying. While Harold cleared his throat, "We are here regarding an alleged violation involving Lot 41, Robert Mason, and possible placement of construction markers on common area property." Possible. That was the first honest word I had heard from the board all week. Dennis stood before Harold finished the sentence. "With respect," Dennis said, "this matter has already been reviewed. Mr. Mason placed markers into an established HOA buffer area and then refused to comply when notified. If we allow one homeowner to absorb Greenbelt, every boundary in Willow Creek becomes negotiable." A few neighbors murmured. Dennis turned slightly, letting the room see his concern. "This is not personal," he said. "It is about protecting community standards." I looked down at my binder. People who say this is not personal usually know exactly how personal it is. Dennis continued for almost 5 minutes. He used phrases like community continuity, it was shared maintenance expectations, and informal board consensus. He said my fence plan would create confusion. He said my conduct had been uncooperative. Then he said the line I had been waiting for. The board authorized me to begin enforcement. Harold looked toward Carla. Carla did not nod. Marjorie did not move. The attorney made a note. Harold turned to me. Mr. Mason, you may respond. I stood and placed the binder on the front table. I'm not here to argue fence color, I said. I'm here to ask one question. What recorded document makes the side yard between Lot 41 and Lot 42? Hoe common area? No one answered. Dennis shifted in his chair. I opened the binder to the first tab. This is the notice Mr. Caldwell sent me. It had no violation number, no hearing date at the time it was issued, no manager's signature, and no architectural committee review attached. I turned the page. This is my email asking for the bylaw section, the recorded map, and the board minutes authorizing enforcement. Then I placed Dennis' email beside it. This is Mr. Caldwell's response, claiming the board reviewed the matter informally. I looked at Harold. Were there minutes? Rayleigh. Harold turned to Carla. Carla clicked on her laptop. No formal board action appears in the records before the notice was issued. The room got quieter. Dennis leaned forward. Informal review is common for urgent matters. Thomas Reed looked up. Informal review does not create enforcement authority if the governing documents require formal action. Dennis closed his mouth. I unrolled the county parcel map across the front table. This is the county parcel map for lots 41 and 42. But Harold stood to look closer. Marjorie put on her reading glasses. Carla connected the map file to the clubhouse projector, and a larger copy appeared on the screen behind the board. Lot 41. Lot 42. One clean black line between them. Grant, straight. Unbothered by Dennis' stone border, sprinkler heads, or green flags. I pointed to the screen. The map makes the line visible. The deed, plat, and licensed survey make it official. And all of them put the disputed strip inside Lot 41. My lot. Dennis stood again. That map does not reflect the lived boundary. For a second, while nobody spoke. Then Marjorie turned toward him. The lived boundary? While Dennis tried to recover. I mean the maintained boundary. The area residents understand as buffer. A board member named Paul Mercer leaned forward. Paul had always been friendly with Dennis, and I could see him trying to find a way to rescue the room. Could long-term maintenance establish? Was some kind of practical boundary? Paul asked. If the area has been treated as buffer for years? Thomas Reed did not look at me. He looked at Dennis. Only if someone can show a recorded instrument, a court-recognized claim, or a properly established legal interest. Mowing grass was not the same as owning it. That sentence landed harder than any argument I could have made. I opened another tab. This is the recorded subdivision plat. This is the common area exhibit Carla provided. There is a drainage easement at the rear swale and a utility easement at the front. There is no greenbelt between Lot 41 and Lot 42. Thomas Reed leaned toward the documents. Mr. Caldwell, do you have a recorded easement, plat notation, or covenant showing hoe authority over that side strip? Dennis looked at his folder. He did not open it. The board has always understood. That is not what I asked, Reed said. For the first time that night, Dennis looked less like a board member and more like a man standing too close to the line he had tried to move. I turned to the Surveyor S statement. This is from Even Low of Benton Low Surveying. His crew placed the orange survey stakes, according to the recorded plat, deed description, and existing monuments. The green flags marked HOA buffer were placed 5 feet 9 inches to 6 feet 2 inches inside my lot. A murmur moved through the room. I heard someone whisper, inside his lot? Dennis raised his voice. Those flags were temporary references. Placed by whom? Harold asked. Dennis did not answer. So I plugged in the thumb drive. I think the video answers that. The projector flickered. The room watched the side yard appear on screen. Morning, light, ranch, empty grass, the orange stakes still in place. Then Dennis walked into frame. No one spoke. He looked up and down the street, crossed into my yard, pulled the first stake, then the second, then the third. Marjoria's hand moved to her mouth. Dennis stood. This is being taken out of context. The video continued. He carried the stakes toward the narrow space behind his shed. Then his voice came through the clubhouse speakers. If he puts that fence up, I lose the whole side strip. The room went still. Then the next sentence played. No, while I handle it through the board. I stopped the video. Dennis did not sit down. We just stood there, one hand on the back of his chair. I opened the final tab. This is an architectural committee summary from 6 months ago. It says Mr. Caldwell raised side yard maintenance access near lots 41 and 42, and the committee advised no action without recorded easement or survey documentation. I looked toward Linda Carver, seated in the second row. Linda stood, holding her old notebook. I was secretary when Dennis first raised it, she said. The old board rejected it for the same reason. No easement. No recorded authority. Rivan, he knew that. Dennis turned toward her. Linda, that was not the same issue. It was the same strip of grass, she said. That was the moment the room turned. Not loudly. Not all at once. But enough. Mrs. Donnelly, who had avoided my eyes at the mailbox, looked straight at Dennis now. The younger couple from the corner leaned toward each other, whispering. Harold removed his glasses and rubbed his forehead. Thomas Reed closed his folder. In my opinion, the attorney said carefully, the association cannot sustain this violation notice on the records presented tonight. There appears to be no documented HOA interest in the side yard between Lot 41 and Lot 42. There also appears to be a serious conflict of interest involving Mr. Caldwell's participation in enforcement. Dennis S. face flushed. I was protecting the neighborhood. No, Marjorie said. Her voice was not loud, but it cut through the room. You were protecting 6 feet of Robert S. Yard. No one defended him after that. Harold called for a short recess. The board stepped into the side office with the attorney. Dennis tried to follow. Thomas Reed stopped him at the door. Given the conflict issue, Mr. Caldwell should remain outside this discussion. Well, Dennis looked around the room, like someone would object. Nobody did. For the first time since he pulled those stakes, Dennis had no letterhead to stand behind. Risen 10 minutes later, the board returned. Harold read from a handwritten note. The violation notice issued to Robert Mason is withdrawn effective immediately. No fines will be assessed. The Architectural Committee will review Mr. Mason's fence application only for design compliance, not property ownership or boundary location. Mr. Caldwell is removed from any participation in this matter, pending further board review. I did not smile. Not because I was not relieved. Because Elena's drawing was still in my binder, and the fence was not built yet. But Dennis had walked into that clubhouse as the man who thought he controlled the line. By the time the county map came down from the projector, even his own board would not let him into the room. The hearing did not end with shouting. It ended with chairs scraping across the clubhouse floor, neighbors speaking in low voices, and Dennis Caldwell standing near the back wall, with his folder still tucked under his arm. For the first time all week, he was not recording anyone. The board did not remove him that night. That would have been too easy and too sloppy. Thomas Reed, the HOA attorney, made that clear before anyone left. There is a process, he told the board. Follow it. That was the difference between what Dennis had done and what the board had to do next. Dennis had acted first and searched for authority later. Now the association had to do it in the correct order. The next morning, I received a formal email from Carla Henson. This one had a violation number, a manager signature, and Harold Beck copied properly. The subject line was simple: withdrawal of violation notice lot 41. The letter stated that the notice issued against my property had been withdrawn, that no fines would be assessed, and that Willow Creek Estates had no recorded common area interest in the side yard between lot 41 and lot 42. I read that sentence 3 times, not because I doubted it, because for almost a week, Dennis had tried to make that strip of grass feel uncertain. The record made it simple again. Well, 2 days later, Benton Lowe returned and reset the survey stakes. Vaughn Lowe placed the orange markers back along the same line, checked the rear monument, checked the front pin, and handed me the replacement invoice. $186. Not a fortune, but still money I had spent, because a board member thought confidence mattered more than my deed. I scanned the invoice and sent it to Carla. By the end of that week, the HOA reimbursed it. The check came with a written apology, signed by Harold. It was not a warm letter. HOA letters rarely are, but it said the words that mattered. The association regrets that enforcement action was initiated without proper review and without recorded authority. I placed it in the binder behind the county map, not because I planned to wave it around the neighborhood, because paper had started this mess. Paper was going to finish it. The architectural committee met the following Tuesday. This time, they reviewed what they were supposed to review: our fence height, our color, material, emplacement relative to the confirmed property line. Marjorie Vance called me afterward. "Your fence is approved," she said. "1. Thank you." "And Robert?" "What, yes?" I should not have signed that hearing letter without seeing the map. I looked out the kitchen window at the orange stakes brighten the grass. "I appreciate you saying that." While she was quiet for a second, Dennis was very convincing. "Why, no. That is not an excuse." "No," I said, "but it is a start." The fence permit came by email the next morning. Approved. 4 feet along the garden side, like 6 feet along the rear. White vinyl, just like Elaine had drawn it. Dennis did not speak to me when the fence crew arrived. He stood on his driveway with his arms crossed, while they set the posts exactly where the survey said they belonged. At one point, the crew chief stopped near Dennis's stone border. Land looked down. "Some of these stones are over the line," he said. "I know. Do you want us to touch them?" "No," I said. "Leave them. For now." That was not mercy. That was documentation. I emailed Dennis a copy of the survey The county map on 3 photographs showing the stones crossing the line. I asked him to move them within 10 business days. For once, he did not reply with a speech about community standards. On the 8th day, the landscaping crew came to move the stones back onto his property. No apology, no eye contact, just stone by stone. The false boundary disappeared. But the bigger consequence did not happen in my yard. It happened at the next board meeting. Thomas Reed had recommended a limited audit of violation notices Dennis had issued or influenced during the previous 2 years. At first, some residents thought that sounded excessive. Then, Carla read the numbers. 11 enforcement communications had gone out with Dennis' name attached before management review was complete. 7 had no proper violation number at the time they were sent. 4 involved properties near Dennis's own home. 2 had resulted in paid fines. That was the moment the room stopped seeing my fence, well, as a neighbor dispute, and started seeing Dennis as a system problem. Mrs. Donnelly stood and said she had paid $75 the year before, after Dennis claimed her side shrubs blocked community sightlines. No one had ever shown her a rule. The man from the corner lot said Dennis had warned him about a basketball hoop that was not even visible from the street. Then Linda Carver stood again, her notebook in both hands. "This is why minutes matter," she said. "Power without records is just pressure." Nobody had a quick answer for that. Thomas Reed advised the board that Dennis should not participate in any enforcement, architectural, or boundary-related decisions, while the review continued. The vote passed 4-1. Dennis was the only no. But the title of board member, still remained. That was when Harold explained the bylaws. A sitting board member could not be permanently removed by a simple board vote unless he resigned. Removal required a special membership meeting and a homeowner vote. So the board called one. Dennis spent the next 2 weeks trying to save himself. He sent an email saying he had only tried to protect neighborhood expectations. He told people the board was overreacting. He claimed the audio from my camera had been unfairly edited, even after Carla confirmed the original file had been reviewed in full. But his problem was no longer me. His problem was the record. The county map did not change. The survey did not change. The minutes from 6 months earlier did not change. The video did not change. And the homeowners had watched him try to turn 6 feet of my yard into Hoa land with nothing but a polo shirt and confidence. At the special meeting, 68 homeowners voted. 59 voted to remove Dennis Caldwell from the board. The amended ethics policy passed the same night. Any board member found using Hoa authority in a personal property dispute would be barred from serving on the board or any enforcement committee for 3 years. That was how Dennis lost the seat he had used to threaten mine. Not by shouting, not by revenge, by procedure, by minutes, by a county map. He never thought anyone would put on a projector. The Hoa refunded the 2 improper fines, what discovered in the audit. It adopted a new rule requiring every violation notice to include management review, a specific bylaw citation, a violation number, and 2 signatures when a board member had a personal interest. No more informal enforcement. No more mystery greenbelt. No more one-man notices on Hoa letterhead. As for my yard, the fence went up in late May. The crew finished on a Friday afternoon. White vinyl Clean lines. Every post inside my property line. When they left, I stood behind it for a while, with Elaine's blue folder in my hand. The garden still looked unfinished. But this time, unfinished meant alive. I planted the first hydrangea, near the spot where I had found the broken orange stake. The soil was soft from morning rain, and for a moment, I could almost hear Elaine telling me I had dug the hole too deep. She would have been right, which she usually was. A week later, Mrs. Donnelly stopped by with a small clay pot of lavender. I should not have believed him so quickly, she said. I told her the truth. He was convincing. She looked at the new fence, then at the hydrangeas. Wait, documents are better. I smiled at that. They last longer. Dennis still lives next door. He keeps his lawn neat. He no longer talks loudly at the mailbox. He no longer wears the HOA lanyard when he walks the neighborhood. The 6-foot strip is quiet now. It has flowers on my side, grass on his, and a property line exactly where the county said it was. The fence did not create the boundary. It only made the truth visible. Dennis thought pulling out 3 orange stakes would move that line. All it moved was his name off the board roster. And every morning, when I take my coffee outside and sit behind the fence Elaine drew years ago, I look at those hydrangeas and remember something my wife understood better than anyone. You do not have to be loud to protect what matters. You just have to know where the line is and keep the proof. If an HOA or neighbor ever tried to move your property line with confidence, gossip, or a clipboard, tell me what happened in the comments. And if you believe private property should be defended with facts, later records, and patience, subscribe for the next property line justice story.